Hey, good evening. We're live again with the reading of the book of Hank the Cowdog, The Case of the Vampire Cat. Chapter 2, Loper Melts a Pipe. Well, at least Loper was kind enough and decent enough to let us ride in the cab with him, although it wouldn't have surprised me if he had made us ride in the back. He has this strange theory, you see, that snow makes dogs wet and wet dogs stink. Now, I've tested that theory myself, and if you ask me, it doesn't hold water, so to speak. If you ask me, wet cowboys stink, but nobody wants my opinion. He let us ride in the front. We made our way through the snow to ice headquarters, and along the way, we passed through several bunches of cows. Their backs were covered with snow, and they were humped over and facing away from the north wind. And every time the north wind blew, and they breathed, which was fairly often, their breath made a fog in the air. Yes, it was cold, a miserable day, and according to the weather report Slim picked up on the radio, the day promised to get even colder and miserabler. Well, when he heard that report, he pressed his lips together and shook his head, and I gotta face all that without a cup of coffee. Well, we pulled around the front of the machine shed and came to stop behind the water well, and Loper was out there doing something with a cutting torch. Well, and whatever he was doing, he wasn't appearing to have a good bill of happiness to it. He wore a frown. Slim watched him for a moment. Plumbing froze up. Loper looked at him from his work. He says, yeah, you got any cute remarks about it? No, only that if you take the time to wrap the pipes when it's warm, they wouldn't freeze up when it's cold. No kidding. Thanks. He went back to heating the pipe with his torch. This happens every year, Loper. A good ranch manager would catch it after a while. You notice that my pipes don't freeze. That's because I take care of my business. What? I stared at Slim and thumped my tail in the seat. Unless I heard him wrong, he had just told a big whopper of a lie. His water pipes had frozen up that very morning. Slim's gaze shifted over to me. Hush, what he don't know won't help him. Then he looked back at Loper. Loper, I was thawing out pipes with a torch one time and burned a hole in the pipe. Boy, that sure makes a mess. Loper turned off the torch and came over to the window. Do you want to do it? Not really. Good. I'll do it, and you can either watch or do something constructive, but don't sit there in a warm pickup and give me advice. Well, you don't need any to get snarly about it. I was just trying to help. Thanks. When I need your advice on plumbing, I'll give you a call. We got phones, I know that's how you operate, Loper. Slam, bang, always in a rush, and that's the wrong way to thaw out pipes. Loper went back to the torch, shaking his head and talking to himself. No wonder you're still a bachelor. No woman could stand you in the morning. Well, you ain't no sugar cake yourself. If you want to know the truth, and I've often wondered how Sally Mae has put up with you for all of these years. Loper started on the torch again and tuned in the flame. She's a lucky woman, and she knows it. That's too much fire, Loper. Just hush. Slim, control yourself for 2 minutes. I'll have this thing thawed out, and then we'll find some little job for you. By George, he struck water. Slim shook his head. I tried to tell you. Loper shut off the torch and threw it down in the snow and came storming over to the window. Get me a hacksaw and with a sharp blade, and don't say one more word. It was a sorry pipe to start with. Slim got out. Sure it was. What are you gonna fix it with, bubble gum? Loper was scrambling to shut the main water valve off. Get me one of them compression joints off the workbench, and if it's not too much trouble, why don't you hurry? It took them an hour to fix the pipe. They had to cut out the bad section with a hacksaw. Now, the blade was not sharp. I could have predicted that. This ranch has never had a sharp hacksaw blade. I think they buy dull blades at some specialty store. Now, once they got the pipe cut, the rest was fairly easy. They slipped the compression joint over both ends and tightened them down. They pressured up the water lines and stopped all the leaks and hollered for Sally Mae to turn on the faucet. She did. It worked. The job was done, and Slim and Roper had managed to do it without any bloodshed. Now, Sally Mae even brought them out a cup of coffee into the heroes, as she called them. I waited to see if Slim would admit that that was his first cup of coffee in the morning and then explain why, but he didn't. Well, the boys put up their tools and stood on the door of the machine shed, sipping their coffee and watching the snow come down. Well, what do you reckon? Asked Loper. Radio says we'll have more this afternoon tonight. It's liable to get pretty bad and take us all day to feed and bust up the ice. I think we'd better do is split up. I'll take the flatbed and get Sally Mae to drive for me. We'll get the feed hay up north. Now, you take the old pickup and go down to the Hodges place and feed them there. You probably better use the army truck, bad as those roads are liable to be. Slim nodded. Well, what if it won't start? Well, why don't you take Alfred? He can pull you. He's done that before, and then he can drive while you string out the feed. Okay with me, but his mama might not go for the idea of me taking him off in a snowstorm, and I've always got a few questions about that myself. I'd hate to get stranded with him along. Loper just chuckled. Why, he's a nice boy, Slim. You two would have a ball together. I know he's a nice boy. That ain't the problem. I just hate being responsible for somebody else's child in a storm. Loper gazed up into the clouds. Well, I think we're going to need all the help we can get today. I'll clear it with his mama. Oh, and you can take the dogs. Thanks a bunch. 2 wet dogs and 1 urchin child ought to fix me right up. Loper went back to the house to organize the troops. Slim finished his coffee and then pulled up the flatbed pickup around to the hay lot and started loading it up for Loper. The snow was coming down even harder than ever. Well, I looked for mice under the bales. Drover stood out in the snow, shivering and moaning. Oh, Hank, I'm so cold. I wish I could go back to bed. Drover, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. I don't know what that means, and I'm freezing. It means that if you could turn your fondest wishes into a horse, you could, I don't know, give a beggar a ride into town, I guess. Where would you go if you find a beggar in this weather? Well, you just... How do I know? Quit asking silly questions and get some mice. I don't even know what a beggar is, and I'm too cold to care. A beggar is one who begs. One what? One beggar. A beggar is one beggar who begs. That's simple enough. Why are they going to town? Because I don't know, they need a horse, I guess. I thought horses lived in the country. They do live in the country, but never mind, Drover, just never mind. I'm sorry I brought it up. Oh, well, that's okay, but I'm still freezing. After that, I stayed as far away from Drover as I could. Just being close to him made me feel all goofy. Little Alfred arrived on the scene just then. He was all dressed up in a red snowsuit, red mittens, snow boots, and a wool stocking cap. Slim got the hay loaded just about the time Loper and Sally Mae and baby Molly arrived. Now, Alfred had been cleared by headquarters to go with us to the Hodges place, but Sally Mae still had quite a bit of advice to give Slim about being careful. Then we all said our goodbyes and went out our separate ways, and Loper and his bunch went north to feed hay, and Slim and our bunch headed up in the old blue pickup and headed south. Well, when we passed Miss Viola's house down the creek, Slim honked his horn and said, "That's where my Petunia lives." We didn't see his Petunia, but her two dogs, Black and Jack, came ripping out of the driveway and barked at us. Well, you know me. I just can't take things lightly. Now, Black and Jack were just barking, so I sprang to the window and I barked back at them. And if the window glass hadn't been rolled up, I probably would have thrashed them both right there in the middle of the country road. Nothing makes me madder than, Slim stopped the pickup and opened his door, and then he said to me, I think he was addressing me, he said, "You really want a piece of them dogs?" No, but that's okay. There was no actual law against, heck, as long as they just barked and didn't, no, we'll just let it slide this time. In other words, no thanks. Then hush. He slammed his door and started off again. Fine! I could handle that. Hushing has never been a problem for me. And that's the end of Chapter 2. Tomorrow night, we've got Chapter 3, and it's entitled, We Meet the Weirdest Cat You Ever Saw. And this has been Chapter 2 of Hank the Cowdog. And that is written by John R. Erickson. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we'll be live again right here. And remember, a little further tonight, I'll have this chapter up on YouTube. And I hope you're able to share and watch as best you can. Thank you so much for joining. Everyone, be safe, be kind, love one another. See you guys tomorrow, I hope. Bye-bye.